much has been said for the promise of the Red Planet. Whether in real life or in games, there's always been that desire for humans to make the lengthy voyage and stake a claim for the future. But such optimism rarely pays off, with the results typically being far more tragic and filled with unspeakable horrors. And with Kai Magazine's Life on Mars Genesis, let's just say that record isn't really changed at all. I'd first heard of this Mega Drive adaptation of their original MSX2 game a few months back, and after playing and enjoying the demo build they'd made available, promptly put in an order for the final release. Which finally arrived during my holiday break, and you know what that means, right? Time to set up the Mega Drive, put the cartridge in, find out whether this final release manages to live up to the potential offered by its demo. So, let's do just that. Life on Mars Genesis puts you in the role of Sam, a technician deployed to humanity's first colony on Mars. Said colony has gone silent, leaving everyone rightly concerned. After 7 long months, the UNSS Barcelona has arrived in Martian orbit, leaving Sam to travel to the surface and discover a few signs that something might not be quite right down below. Firstly, not being able to land inside the main hangar, meaning entrance is only possible through the air purification center. Secondly, the sense of unease is amplified by the welcoming committee, not with colonists welcoming Sam and leading them to what's gone wrong, but instead a group of assorted worker and security robots showering Sam not with gratitude, but with plasma blasts. Something has gone seriously wrong inside this colony, and it's up to Sam to work out what's happened and bring it to an end. Like most Metroidvania style games, this is a solo mission, though Sam will have the occasional uplink to the Barcelona for updates and new objectives. I should stress the occasional here. This isn't like Metroid Fusion, where frequent communications with your handler could kind of break the flow on occasion. Nor do you have the total isolation of Super Metroid, where you're left to your own devices once the mission gets underway. As a setting, the colony base is certainly what one could call compact. In itself, that's no real problem. It's just that we're playing a Metroidvania style experience here, and the backtracking does make the small map stand out quite a bit, kind of like a sore thumb. What also doesn't help are the visuals. Each sector of the colony, from the elevator shaft acting as the central routing, to the other areas like the Industrialist Control Center, Research Labs and Air Purification Center, over to the mines, caves and what lies beyond, all offer their own palette and designs. The problem is, while each of them is distinct from each other, within each one it all feels the same. There's no real variation on the visuals for platforms and backgrounds, so it's kind of easy to feel lost at times, unless you're really keeping an eye on where you're going as you're working through. This, I feel, is compounded by the map design, as sections twist and go back on themselves quite frequently, and while I can't be certain about this, I do feel it's a result of the maps being directly brought over from the original MSX game. And there it made sense as a way to reduce how much memory these maps take up. And so for 8-bit games, I don't really have a problem with this. It's a nifty way to be more efficient, and depending on games, it kind of works out. A great example for me is the Sacred Armor of Antiriad, which packed quite a decent enough map into a single load for machines like the C64 and Spectrum. I just wish though that in the process of making this Mega Drive port, the developers took the opportunity to expand the map a bit and allow the mission to breathe a bit more. It has to be said, should you get lost amongst all the wandering, you do have a map available, and you can use that to regain your bearings. You can bring it up by holding start for a moment at any time, or if you're playing with a 6-button controller, you can also tap the X button to display it. which I reckon is far more convenient. The map offers a general view of your surroundings, at least enough to give you an idea of where you are in the world, but it lacks any points of interest you might be interested in, whether that's bosses you still need to fight that you found, save points, or where any skipped items may be situated. So if you want to go back for something you might have missed later on in the game, you're going to be relying on your memory alone. The meat of the Metroidvania experience though is what it offers for upgrades, and it's one area Life on Mars Genesis does something a little different and maybe a bit more interesting. You have two ability upgrades you can earn during the mission. The jump upgrade lets you double jump, with the run upgrade being pretty self-explanatory, I guess. There's also a trio of weapons, starting with an auto-fire upgrade to your plasma rifle. Though this one is found later on in the game, it's really convenient to have to just save you hammering that fire button. To go with this are two secondary weapons which you'll acquire during the mission: grenades and a flamethrower. Completing the game will require you to acquire both these abilities and the secondary weapons. The abilities will be needed to reach important locations on the map, with the secondary weapons being needed to clear out some environmental hazards. There's one final set of upgrades available, and these affect Sam's environment suit, offering two systems to work with: its shield generator and its power generator. The shield generator protects Sam from harm, whether that's in the form of attacks by enemies or contact with them. When drained, it engages an emergency teleport to send Sam back to the last save terminal they've used. The upgrades for this extend the maximum capacity of the shield, allowing you to take more damage before said teleport kicks in. When it comes to the power generator, this is used to power Sam's various weapons, and will slowly recharge over time. Like the shield generator, you too can increase its capacity. Both these expansions are done through pickups you'll locate around the colony. Though really, that's not all, as you can also boost your weapon's effectiveness, along with the rate your power generator recharges. Now this is both an interesting mechanic, but one I also feel introduces most of the friction into the game. It all starts with cells. When you destroy enemies, they'll drop these, along with giving you a small boost to your shield power. They'll be added to a tally. These can be spent at upgrade terminals situated around the colony, though each terminal can only upgrade a specific weapon or your suit's recharge rate. It makes for an interesting approach at increasing or decreasing the challenge the game offers. If you need an extra bit of help taking out those tougher enemies, just grind a bit and buy some upgrades. Otherwise, if you really want to set yourself up for a challenge, skip them and try to hold out with what you've got. Now that might be a bit weird, you might think, if only because of the limited number of shield and power boosts available, which for me truly comes into its own during the boss encounters. Perhaps it's just me, but sometimes it feels like it's not possible to evade their movement patterns without taking damage, even if you nailed the timing when you're trying to avoid them. The thing is, the bosses only have one movement pattern each, but they take so much damage that it really makes it a drag to fight through. Once you've learned their attack pattern, all that's left really to do is to avoid them until the opportunity comes up, then unload as much firepower as you can, then repeat until they go down. I know that boss battles in games can be seen as being a divisive subject, but I do like a good one. Having bosses which attack with a variety of patterns goes a long way to adding depth to these encounters. Plus, it also makes for a great opportunity to challenge the players by offering a brief respite from the game's core mechanics, by allowing them to focus on something different. Though conceptually, it's kind of neat that you could forego those upgrades to weapon damage and power recharge rates. The thing is though, you really need to have acquired some upgrades before entering the last part of the game. Once you get into the control center and take out the boss there, most of your time is going to be spent getting yourself to the point where you can tackle the research lab. This is your next objective, and I have to admit, it was funny that the first time you get there, and if you teleport out with your shields being drained, you do get the quip from Sam that perhaps they shouldn't be tackling this part of the base yet. Now once you finally master it, you work your way through the research lab, you get to the boss and take it out, which has been this recurring enemy that you've seen in several of the other encounters. The final revelation of what has happened to the colony is honestly kind of horrifying. With the infection and mutation of the entire colony population, now all part of an alien hive mind. A hive mind which is now turning its eyes, or whatever its equivalent is, to the Barcelona before setting its focus onto the Earth itself. And of course now you've got access to the central reactor at the heart of the colony, and your objective here is simple: fight your way through to the reactor, extinguish the alien threat, and blow it up, preventing them from enacting their ghastly plan. This entire part of the game, breaching the reactor complex, fighting your way through, taking out the final threat, really demonstrates that the enemies take far more damage than they should, as even upgrading my weapons quite a few times through the course of the run that I've recorded here, still felt they took on a lot of weapons fire to take them out, and it made fighting through quite a slog, and not in a good way. And again, you've got this overly tight maze to navigate through, and whilst it doesn't look like a big area on the map, the amount of curving and backtracking and everything else you've got to do to make your way to the end does make it feel far longer than perhaps it should. So you've got the final boss, once again with a fairly simple attack pattern and taking way too many hits to take out. And then it's time to take out the reactor, which is kind of a bit of an anticlimax. Then when you do, it's time to get back to your ship before the colony goes up, and surprisingly, the final countdown is kind of generous. But you've still got to be careful. Should your shields go down, you're going to be teleported back to that terminal outside the reactor, and whatever time you have left is still there. It's not going to reset, so you know what that means? If you waste too much time dying and getting stuck, you might not be able to make it out. But when you make it to your ship and escape the colony right as it goes up, and then you're left with a bit of an anticlimax. It's a bit of a cliffhanger here, as you've left the complex and now you're heading to the Barcelona, and then the game ends. It really cools the mood here. Perhaps it's me, but I kind of wish there was a final confrontation aboard the Barcelona. At least that way the story could have been concluded ahead of whatever the follow-up may be, if there is one. I really am in two minds about this game. On one side, the mechanics of Life on Mars Genesis are quite solid. Player movement, gunplay and collisions all handle themselves well. The work done on the engine is tight, and I never really found myself frustrated with platforming or just getting around the colony. But the thing is, on the other side, I feel the rest of the design was a little underdeveloped. From the way that popcorn enemies really took a lot of hits to take out, even with various upgrades being purchased multiple times, to the way the bosses were designed, which they offered a simple challenge, sure, but it was dragged out and it felt like it went on far longer than perhaps it should have needed to. And of course, there's the map design, where things were perhaps a little too compact at times, making the colony a repetitive environment to explore. The thing is though, I didn't hate my time with it. If I had, I don't think I would have started a second run through, for recording purposes, right after I'd beaten the game. Outside of the grinding, it's not a long game to work through. Unsurprisingly, the grinding does add a bit artificially here, and you do have the option to play at a higher difficulty level. And for those players who want more of a challenge, I reckon you're going to get it there. It's just, I'm not sure it was worth the asking price. Life on Mars Genesis is only available in cartridge form, so if you're an emulator person, an FPGA system person, whatever, and you don't have a real Mega Drive that can take cartridges, you're kinda out of luck here. If you want to play it, you've got to have a real system. And the truth is, at least for me, when I factored in the game's price along with the postage down here to Australia, it was closing in on the price of new console games. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, I put my pre-order in because I enjoyed that demo. And at this point, when I look back on it, I didn't really experience many of the negatives I had with the game here. You don't really need to grind at this point. In fact, you don't have access to any of the terminals. And the first boss battle is with one of the tougher robot foes. You'd expect it to be more of a threat at this point of the game. The thing is though, I'm someone who feels supporting independent creators is an important thing to do. And so, enjoying the demo, thinking there was some promise, I felt justified enough to put my money where my mouth is, and so I pre-ordered it. Now, that being said, if you don't have the means to play it on original hardware, or you're someone who only wants to support homebrew games with ROMs, there is at least one other option. Life on Mars was also ported to Windows. This came before the Mega Drive adaptation, and is mostly what it was based on, so it took the MSX version, evolved it a bit, and made it available there. It's available on Steam, it's a lot cheaper. It might be something, if your curiosity is piqued, that you can go and explore. So, Life on Mars Genesis. Is it a great Metroidvania game? Honestly, I'd say probably not. It plays alright, it's just the design needed more refinement. And being that it's a port of a port, it was not going to really get that. So ultimately, if this looked interesting to you, I reckon you should consider checking out the PC port. Even if you're someone who wants to play this game on original hardware and ordering a cartridge isn't a problem for you. Should a digital release become available, as is the case with the MSX original, then I'd say that could possibly be worth a look too. And with that, there's nothing more for me to say than to thank you all very much for watching.